Nebraska volleyball means a lot to people. Winning is very important in the state, super important, and we feel when we don't win, but it is a game, and it's bringing so much more to people, to ourselves, to each other than just wins and losses.
Yeah. Welcome back to The Vault, where we unlock stories that matter. I'm your host, David Cota. I'm joined by Dani Busboom Kelly, the head coach of Nebraska Volleyball, and she's had quite a first year with the Huskers. If you don't mind my sharing a few of the accolades, Dani was named 2025 Big Ten Coach of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The team had a 33-game win streak, set a program record for hitting percentage, 351. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and one of the things that's been real impressive is level of stability and consistency with the program and the team and coaches. And so congratulations on a successful year one, and thanks for being here with us today.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
good to be here.
Absolutely. So your story is a unique one, a Nebraska kid that now is leading the Nebraska volleyball program. Do you mind maybe just telling us that story and a bit of the path that took you through Nebraska and back to the head coaching job?
Yeah, sure. You know, I grew up in a small town south of Lincoln and played all the sports growing up, but kind of being from Nebraska as a young girl, you gravitate towards volleyball. So that was my favorite sport. And I committed to play volleyball at Nebraska, I think when I was a sophomore, and spent 4 years, and then kind of decided I wanted to get into coaching and got my first coaching job at the University of Tennessee. Spent a couple years there, a year at Louisville, year back at Nebraska for 5 years as an assistant.
Yep.
And then 8 years at Louisville as a head coach. And now I'm back here after 1 year. So
you played for John Cook and then coached with John Cook.
Yes, both.
Yeah, and now have succeeded John Cook.
Yep.
Yeah. It's got to be a special relationship for you.
Yeah, you know, just going through the growth and seeing each other change. You know, I mean, he's seen me as a 15-year-old and now as a 40-year-old. And, you know, I've seen all the different sides of him from, you know, he recruited me, he coached me, I worked for him. And then, then he kind of turned the reins over to me.
Yeah, excellent. Being both a player in the program and now being the head coach of the program, how's that influenced the way you lead?
I feel like all of my experiences influence the way I lead, not necessarily just at Nebraska.
Yeah.
I do think that being a player and an assistant coach here, you know, there's a lot of comfortability with the program, with the athletic department. It makes it easier to kind of find your path immediately. You know, when I got to Louisville, it took a little bit longer just because I was new and didn't know that much about the program. But I think that has been huge. But I also understand what it means to be a part of this program, what it means to the state. I think I can explain that to recruits. I go about my day knowing that. And a lot of what I do is leading by example and modeling behavior that I want my players to behave. So just having such a familiarity with the program and the people, I think makes a big difference.
Was there a point as a player where coaching became an idea that you thought might be a future path for you professionally?
I do think when I switched positions from setter to libero, you know, I really realized I have a lot to offer, and playing two positions at a high level, your knowledge of the game expands and you see things a different way. And that's maybe what sealed the deal. I always kind of thought maybe I'd want to coach, but didn't know for sure really until my senior year.
Yeah. I've heard John tell that story about you and your switch from setter to libero. And I'd imagine in the same way you say a lot of experiences have prepared you for head coach and leading. That would certainly be one of them, I would imagine, in terms of how you relate to the players and decisions that you and your coaching staff have to make throughout a year.
Yes, definitely. I think makes it very relatable and, you know, real when you're talking to a recruit and a player about doing something out of their comfort zone and that you can be successful.
Yeah. Is there a way that you and your coaching staff describe the culture that you're trying to promote and build within the team, or does it change based on the moment and the pieces that you have?
Not necessarily.
In a given year?
You know, we don't talk about it the same way all the time.
Yeah.
I do think it changes team by team and leader, you have different leaders and sometimes younger teams, older teams. But again, I talk to our staff a lot about modeling behavior. I don't want the managers to be doing all the cleaning up every day. Like we all need to be doing that.
Yep.
There's no like hierarchy.
Yep.
And that's, I think, really important for me and all the programs that I've been a part of and have been able to lead is I don't want it ever to feel like a hierarchy.
Everyone's in it together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the accountability and, that's just becomes a lot more natural and people buy in a lot quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned in the intro the stability of both the coaching staff and the players in an era where the transfer portal is so present with so many sports. You've been able to keep the team connected and have not had a player enter the portal. What do you attribute that to when you think about that? How do you reconcile that reality?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's a lot because of the resources at Nebraska.
Yeah.
And you're playing against the best every day. So even if you're not a starter, you can feel yourself getting better and better and improving. And most great athletes, that's what they want to feel and see is that they're changing and improving and their game is evolving. And then outside the court, Nebraska has everything you'd ever want as far as resources, academics, meals, sports psychologists, you name it. We have it all. And I think we do it at a super high level.
Pretty good place to play volleyball.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So recognizing that's a big reason why the team has been able to stay together.
Yeah, I think so.
As you came in a little over a year ago and needed to begin the process as the head coach, building relationships with the players, beginning to set the expectation that was important to you, how did you go about that? How do you begin to develop that trust that's necessary to lead a team as you and the coaching staff do?
Yeah, honestly, it just takes time.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a secret to it or like, oh, we had this meeting and now we all trust each other.
Right.
That's really unrealistic. So I think it's time, one-on-one conversations, and again, just showing up the same every day. And, if I can be myself and be consistent with who I am, I think that will help our team trust me and at least want to get to know me to see if they want to trust me.
Right.
If I come in and I'm different all the time, I think that's where trust can break down. So being really consistent and sticking to who I am, I think was very key for year one. And now year two already feels there's a better level of relationships and communication. And, I understand the team a little bit more. So I'm excited for this year and kind of the little changes I can make as a coach and a leader.
And I think that point that you've made around consistency and leading by example, it's so important, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, being authentic to who you are and being consistent is what builds trust over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You were at a client event that we hosted last year in the Champions Club, and you were talking about an approach that you take to communication and feedback with the players, that it's very open, that oftentimes you'll give feedback openly so everyone is aware of where a certain player stands or what it is that you're coaching them on, so as to not create dynamics or misunderstanding. Talk a bit about that approach and the philosophy behind being that transparent with the team.
I just never want our team or players to feel like they're guessing what I'm thinking or they're assuming anything. It's like, try to stay ahead of that as much as possible. You're not going to totally stay ahead of it, but just being open with them again in group settings. If there's a position battle and, we're trying to figure out who's going to play, who's going to start this next game, trying to have that conversation with both players, not just we're going to have conversation with player A and player B. Like if we can talk to them both, then I think there's an understanding with each other.
Yeah.
Like what they don't think I'm going through this alone. It's like, okay, we're both actually going through this. And then they understand the struggle that we have. So I think as a coach and a leader, you need to have also a level of vulnerability.
100%.
And and that's part of it, is just having those open conversations and in front of multiple people, not just one-on-one all the time.
That's really good. So you talk about the resources that Nebraska has, which are amazing and certainly at the top of the class for college volleyball. Skill and talent is necessary. There are a number of intangibles or characteristics that I'd imagine you are looking for when you're recruiting a player into the program. Beyond skill, what is it that you're looking for in a player that gives you confidence they'll be a good fit with the Nebraska program?
I think that varies by position and player and what you need in that certain year. But I do think the more college athletics evolves with NIL and rev share and the resources, like you really want players that love the game and just love to play. And if you have people that are players on your team that are doing it because their parents want them to, or only for the money, or because they just want to be a part of Nebraska, they're not going to last, you know? And so if they really love volleyball and love competing, I think that's number one.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we look for the, the cliche things, like who is gritty, who's, had to maybe fight for some things in their life. And I think those all matter as well, but nothing is a deal breaker.
Yeah. So a lot of times I'll hear you say, we just need to go for it. Or a player will say, I need to be in the mindset where I go for it. Is that a description of a part of the culture or part of the mindset you try to instill in the players?
I think the fear of failure and, just not being scared and getting our team to understand that at the end of the day, it is a game.
Yeah.
And I know I'm very aware Nebraska volleyball means a lot to people. Winning is very important in the state, super important. And we feel when we don't win, but, it is a game and it's bringing so much more to people, to ourselves, to each other than just wins and losses.
Yeah. When you're talking with coaches and they're offering you a compliment toward your team, what words or what description could they use in complimenting your team that really makes you proud as a head coach?
I think playing with joy, where it looks like they're playing for each other, it's just playing free. I think all those come to mind. And, I think that's different than maybe other schools. At Louisville, they would say, you guys play with a chip on your shoulder. And we really embrace the underdog mentality. Can't really do that at Nebraska. So now it's like I want them to be playing free and enjoying it. And so the fans can relate to them and see that they're playing without that pressure and that fear.
Yeah. You mentioned that you committed to Nebraska as a sophomore. And I know that in volleyball in particular, that can be the case where the athletes are young when they're committing to a program, yet you also were a multi-sport athlete. Do you encourage that amongst your players if in fact it is something that they want to do?
Definitely. I do think it's harder now even than it was back, when I was in school, which wasn't that long ago, but I definitely encourage it. You just kind of see it less and less. And most of our recruits have played multiple sports for sure up until their freshman year. And then a lot of them might transition into one. But, if they want to do high school basketball, track, I think it's great. And, you don't want to burn them out. But there are so many amazing opportunities in volleyball and all sports now. So if you're going to do basketball, you might be giving up some, elite camps or some USA opportunities. So it is a little bit more of a balancing act than it was because back in the day it was just high school was really your only competition. Now there's Under Armour All-American, there's USA Volleyball, there's Adidas Elite, there's so many different really amazing experiences that a lot of players will decide to do that instead of play multi-sports.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned NIL. NIL has brought a lot to the game. It certainly has recognized the value of the athletes, and they're able to monetize their name, image, and likeness in really good ways. I have to imagine it's brought dynamic into the locker room as well. That is important to manage. How do you manage the reality of NIL and the fact that some athletes are more marketable or have a different kind of approach to brand building than others, and ensure that that doesn't become a drawback for team chemistry?
I think we're still entering the phase in our sport. It's not quite to where you hear the numbers and the stories of basketball and
Right.
football and
Right.
even women's basketball. But we're entering it, so
Okay.
it's something we're constantly talking about. But again, I'll go back to just Nebraska in general and the resources. I think you come here and you know that you're going to be rewarded for what you're doing, and you know if you're playing more and you have a bigger role and you're working hard, you're going to be rewarded more. And also, we have players that have very small roles that are killing it in their brand building. Macy Bosinger just graduated, but
Yeah.
she was one of our most followed players who had a very limited role, and
Yep.
I think she's just being an influencer right now because she has that type of following and
That's
she
great.
can monetize it. So just being a part of our program already puts you at a level that I don't think anybody else can touch in the entire country.
Yeah.
Now, what you're rewarded for or the work you do on the court will vary year to year. But again, having pretty transparent conversations, but also making sure that we allocate our resources so everybody is appreciated,
Yeah.
I think is important. And there's a lot of programs that, especially in volleyball right now, that are just rewarding a couple players or these handful.
Yeah.
Where again, we're lucky at Nebraska that we can reward everybody, and then as they build their brands, they can make so much money on their own.
Yeah.
And then hopefully their roles on the court will translate
Absolutely
to more resources. But it's hard.
It's a new dynamic.
It's going to get way tougher for us.
Absolutely.
Like it seems fairly simple right now, but I know in 1 year it's probably going to be completely different.
Yeah. The expectations that come with the program, as you mentioned, are high, just naturally high from the history of the program and also just the expectations that you and the coaching staff set and that the team sets. How do you help the team manage with those expectations in the midst of a season and ensure that it's still positioning them to give their best?
We always work hard to keep it light and fun and mix things up and keep our players on their toes a little bit, what we're doing in practice. And also, we want practice to be as competitive as games. Of course, every coach does that, but I think we do a great job of it. And so the games hopefully feel a little bit easier than even our practices. But it's a battle at Nebraska, and I've forget that, and being away for 8 years, and we had our own expectations at Louisville that were amazing, and we built that and we earned the right for those expectations. So my perspective might be a little bit different because it wasn't just given to me at Louisville right when I got there. It was built. And again, communicating with our players that's why they come here. And I think it's really important in the recruiting process to start talking about that early.
Yeah. Appreciating the right to have those expectations is a big part of it.
For sure.
Because you built that at Louisville. So the team and the process to get there as you were working through it, you might have a stronger appreciation for the expectations when they show up, as opposed to feeling the weight of those expectations.
And it's very difficult to win at a high level.
Absolutely,
at any sport.
And to remain there.
Very difficult. And I got to the point at Louisville where people were saying, we expect you guys to be in the Final Four. I don't think you understand how hard that is. And then I've had fans here tell me after last season, I hope you have a rebounding year this year. I'm like,
you're like, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. Going undefeated.
That's right. 20-0 in conference.
That's barely losing a set.
That's right.
We are going to rebound.
Yes. We were scraping by.
And I know we didn't win it all and make the Final Four. And there was a lot of reasons for that. But it's pretty funny hearing that sometimes.
And part of it is, to your point, just acknowledging it, owning it, and saying, all right, how do we ensure that we still see this as a privilege to have earned this expectation?
And as a leader, especially at Nebraska, you don't want to add to that expectations and pressure and fear of failure. You want to try to diminish that, take some of that away.
Yeah. Keeping the team on their toes. Sometimes, I'm sure as a coaching staff, there are things you can do intentionally. Sometimes you just have circumstances. This year in the spring, you weren't able to practice at Devaney. It's getting renovated. What did that do in terms of pushing the team out of their comfort zone a little bit?
It was great. We also flipped practice times. So we practiced in the morning, which Nebraska's never done.
Okay.
I've done that a few times as a head coach, but our team really enjoyed it. And it felt like they were dialed in every day. We didn't have anybody forget things. It was very some of the issues you think you might have with that, we didn't even have any. So it ended up being an awesome spring. I think it was good for us.
Yep.
It's good to be challenged mentally and on our toes. And we're going to have even more challenging summer with Devaney being under renovation with camps and our players working on getting reps and training on their own. Where are they going to do that?
Right.
But I do think it'll pay off.
Yeah.
And, we're very comfortable at Nebraska. We've already talked about all the resources and what we have. And sometimes it's good to be uncomfortable.
I heard Jalen refer to the start of the season as a traveling circus. And you are going to be all over the place. You're playing at AT&T Stadium, playing at T-Mobile in Vegas. You're going to be in Chicago, play at Wrigley Field. Is part of that as well to just early in the year push the competition level even higher and also be out of your comfort zone a bit?
For sure. And I think there's a little misconception about some of these events. These are huge opportunities for our sport. And Nebraska needs to be at the forefront of some of those. We want to. Plus, they're providing resources for our program. But they're all very different. AT&T is Exhibition Games. So that's a company that has done a lot of reality TV. So we don't know what this is going to be like.
Right.
But I think it was worth taking a risk, especially because it's exhibition and it's a glorified practice, to be honest. It doesn't count for anything. We can play a lot of people. We can get better. But the fact there's money on the line makes it a little bit more serious than an exhibition.
Right.
So it'll be super fun.
Yeah.
And then we go to Vegas.
Playing at AT&T Stadium. I mean, that'll be unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Then we go to Vegas for, a renewed rivalry with Texas.
Which is great.
That's a big deal to both of our programs. And Jarrett, Elliott, and I work together to hey, let's get this going a little bit. And let's try to do it in Vegas. So that's kind of how that came about. It's a neutral site, but a big arena, have a big time feel that you want to experience in the non-conference. So our players, especially ones that might not have played a lot last year, feel the pressure in a big moment.
Yeah.
And then Wrigley Field's a Big Ten SEC challenge that we had no control over.
Oh, really? So
so that's like,
the leagues
hey, they want to do this. These are the teams that are doing it. And we're fired up for that too. Again, Wrigley Field's a very iconic venue. So,
I mean,
but they're all different and some were out of our control. Some, they're just very, very different events, very different reasons behind them, but all unique and great for volleyball.
And all of that before your home opener.
Yes.
So you will be all
Devaney
over
is under
the place.
construction.
That's
so,
true.
You needed a little bit of a buffer.
Pushing capacity up to 10,000, is that right?
Yeah. And we just want to make sure that when we go into Devaney, it's ready.
It's ready. Yeah.
I know our team room, locker room, and all that is getting renovated, which is overdue. So our players are going to be really happy.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, that'll be really good. The sport of college volleyball has really been on a rise over the past several years. And I was able to go with our family and my two daughters and our son to the volleyball match in Memorial Stadium. And now these larger venue events that are playing out. I appreciated you saying Nebraska should be a part and is a part of driving that. Does the team feel that moment where volleyball just continues to run more and more into the prime position?
I don't really know.
Okay.
I haven't talked to them about it, but they are friends with athletes from all over the country of all sports. So they're not surprised.
Yeah.
They hear stories.
They have to love it because
they love
volleyball.
it, but they hear stories from their friends and, competition, but also men's basketball players, football players. So I don't think they're shocked by any of it or feel like, oh, I can't believe we're doing this. It's more excitement and grateful for the opportunities.
Yeah, that's really good. Let's talk about the team a bit. You went through spring, obviously gives you an opportunity to play different rotations, put players in different positions. What did you learn and what do you think fans should expect come fall?
It's a lot of the same players, to be honest. We're lucky to have a core returning back. We have some great battles. I feel like we're deeper than last year, which is crazy to say.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Our freshmen were awesome. I think bringing in young players that are just so eager adds always a dynamic to the team. So having them here in January was huge for us, and we're healthy, which is super important.
Yep.
But I think you'll see a lot of players this year, not just 7 or 8, which will be great.
Yeah. Dani, thanks for joining us today. Good luck
at
the upcoming season. We'll all be cheering you on. At FNBO, we're proud of our partnership with Husker Athletics, and so we appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And for all the listeners, thanks as well for joining us. Until next time, David Cota with The Vault. Thank you.
The Vault is brought to you by FNBO, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Podcasts are for informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. This content is educational in nature and should not be considered financial, tax, or legal advice. When making decisions about your financial situation, consult a financial professional for advice. References to third-party organizations, services, and websites are for informational purposes only and do not constitute an endorsement by First National Bank of Omaha. Any third-party services or organizations referenced are separate from First National Bank of Omaha. Podcasts are not regularly updated and information may become outdated. Deposit products are offered by First National Bank of Omaha, member FDIC. Investment products are not FDIC insured and not a deposit or other obligation of the bank. Not insured by any federal government agency. Not guaranteed by the bank and may lose value.